All right, risk profile. Well, we're really excited to have you on today. I'm with Chuck Yates, former managing director with Kanye Anderson. And if you don't know what that means, it's kind of a big deal. Oil and oil and gas went through a very significant technology change 10 years ago. And Chuck was a part of the investment team, not only being an early employee with a large institutional fund, but also working with entrepreneurs as they started their businesses in oil and gas and leading several of them up to successful exits. His funds, how many of them were there?
So when I left, we were investing Energy Fund 8.
Okay. So a pretty decent amount of just raw fund size. You had at one point 50 portfolio companies, individual entrepreneurs, working with your teams to find and develop and sell the right to drill.
As we would call them, 5 guys in a rusty pickup truck.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to talk about what you thought about as you were joining Kanye Anderson, how that was like going through the ups and downs of an oil cycle, and eventually your exit, and kind of some of the lessons that you learned, really kind of reflecting on what makes an entrepreneur, what you wish you would have done better or worse, all those lessons, so that we can share these with our community and hopefully, kind of help people understand what it's like when you're an entrepreneur.
Well, hold on. I got to say one thing though, Mark.
Of course.
You honored our agreement. I made him sign a contract that he couldn't say I got fired from Kane, that it was an exit. And you honored that. That's very nice. Chuck's exit. That's a more pleasant word. I like that.
I think you can call it whatever you want to. I mean, you get the right to nuance.
The boot, whatever.
You get the right to nuance your whole life. I mean, you can run into people that literally do nothing all day long and yet give themselves a good title. So you might as well be able to give yourself a title.
Well, you've seen my LinkedIn. My title is Galactic Viceroy.
And it scares me every time I look at it.
So I have signed with 2 major law firms.
Yes.
Engagement letters that are signed by Galactic Viceroy. I have signed with an accounting firm, a financial services firm, and a major trading exchange engagement letters as Galactic Viceroy.
Well, I'm glad to hear the follow through. To be honest, Chuck, like you were an MD at Kanye Anderson. So how does an MD at Kanye Anderson sign things with Galactic Viceroy? Like, where does that come from?
One, it was kind of born out of the fact of LinkedIn makes you put a title on, right? And I'm sitting there going, well, unemployed dude doesn't sound very great. Got the boot, and just, Galactic Viceroy, I put it on there. And this is a great story. So a guy I've known for 20 years, I post on LinkedIn, it says, new job. And you know how it gives you the notice of Chuck has a new job. Say congratulations.
Yeah.
So I get congrats on the new job. Galactic Viceroy. And I'm like, okay, he just hit a button. So I messaged back, something to the effect of, well, I'm just chasing my dreams. And he goes, well, I know you'll crush it. And I'm like, it says Galactic Viceroy. How do you not get that?
I wore just for you my Darth Vader socks.
Nice.
And I really appreciate the title because, as a young guy coming up in the industry, watching you crush a bunch of deals, and saying, well, it would be really great. Like I remember telling my mother-in-law, I was graduating from college, and I was like, one day I'd like to start an E&P company backed by private equity, which was, the kind of
that was be the one thing, of the man.
Be one of the entrepreneurs that you funded.
I want to be a Roman numeral guy, right? I mean, that's how they said it. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah.
So we got a chance to kind of catch up over lunch and compare notes. I think we're both reformed career ladder climbers, and
some by choice, some not. But
well,
anyway,
and we're talking to really share the lessons you learned when you jumped into Kanye Anderson. Obviously it's really hard to predict when things go well. But in the arc of your story, you were one of 3 employees with a institutional kind of hedge fund, thoughtful investor, starting an energy practice, building that up through a technological boom that allowed you to capitalize on a lot of success. in what was going on, realizing that success and then changing, like figuring out what to do through the, the ups and downs of oil and gas, and eventually exiting. And
I like that.
That has to involve all kinds of who am I? Why am I here? What does that mean for me? Types of scenarios. And if we can kind of unpack, what you thought you would be able to do versus what you were able to do, I think a lot of those lessons translate to the entrepreneurs that, that ultimately dealing with the uncertainty of what we do day to day is part and parcel with the job. And it exists, inside companies as an entrepreneur, and it exists outside companies as an entrepreneur. And by the way, you were, advising lots of entrepreneurs in their day-to-day practice along the way. So I'm really excited to hear some lessons learned, and excited to see where this goes.
All righty. So was there a question? Or was that your opening
I
statement,
was rambling.
prosecutor?
I was rambling a little bit, but okay. So you've made some investments. What was your first investment after you're in Kane Anderson that you were like, okay, I'm good at this, or I know what to do, or at least have some guardrails around how to think of it?
Yeah, no. So the first real investment that quote unquote I did was Dave Lenormand and Crusader. And what Kane had done historically is they had invested basically in public companies, but done private securities, generally somewhere on the balance sheet above equity but below debt. So convertible preferreds, redeemable preferreds, sub debt with warrants, that type stuff.
Sure.
And when I joined Kane in 2001, the equity markets were getting so hot for oil and gas that people could do a overnight deal for $50 million. So they didn't really need Kane's capital. And so we transitioned into doing startups with a management team where we owned, call it 90 some odd percent of the company, and management owned 5% of the company or so. And the first real one of those we did was with Dave Lenormand. And we wound up having just a great run with Dave. We invested in 3 different Crusader entities, 1, 2, 3. I think we gave Dave $81 million, and he gave us $162 million back.
Sounds fair. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was really good. I thought at the time, oh man, I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
I also, if you charted what happened during Fund 2, because we literally went from raising Fund 2 to fully paying the fund out and shutting it down in like 4 years, which is unheard of in private equity. I really thought I was smart. I really thought I was good. From 2001 to 2005, just go see what oil prices did and natural gas prices did. Yeah. I wasn't that smart. So
meaning that the oil prices were really increasing during the time. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so, at the time it was like, man, I'm smart. I know what I'm doing. We're doing good deals. With hindsight and a little bit of wisdom, I would tell every entrepreneur, never forget the magnitude of beta, luck, karma, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Well, speaking as an entrepreneur that sold in January of 2020, I fully endorse and agree with this message.
There we go.
But I like a lot of the past couple of entrepreneurs that we've had talking about their lessons learned in starting a company and then going through a rationalization, a shutdown, and exit, whatever you want to call it, is, their journey tapped into so many elements of my story where if this conversation had gone just a little bit differently, we probably would have shut down. And the whole part and parcel deal with being an entrepreneur is it really is fragile. At every step of the way, it's really tough to be crushing it in a rising price environment and realize, well, what was I contributing to that versus what was around me?
Right.
But you really get there's a momentum and a gravity towards the next bigger thing.
Yeah, no, it's almost, and I don't want to use this analogy because there is thought, there is good work done to make a successful company. So I don't want to say it's all luck, but
Sure.
it's like when you're on a roll in Vegas, blackjack.
Yeah.
Figuring out how much you should be betting
Yeah.
is important, and it's kind of that way as an investor. I didn't appreciate it all, the role beta played and everything, until I was 2 weeks post the exit. and you just sit back there and you take a deep breath and you look and you go, oh my gosh, so much had to do with product prices, capital markets, and the like. And the mistakes that were made were probably not recognizing that you were on a surfboard riding a wave in, and that the wave was going to stop. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things. I do a clubhouse room kind of every Wednesday night with Jeff Davies.
Yeah.
And we had Dan Pickering on as our guest one night. And we were talking about kind of energy transition investing. And Dan made a great point, because we were all saying, this is, look, shale 2.0. It's another bubble. A lot of money is going to be thrown. A lot of money is going to be lost. How do you even invest there? And Dan said, well, you buy the stocks until they start going down, and then you sell them. And I mean, he's right. So kind of one of those things you sort of realize with some hindsight is at the end of the day, if you're having to pay taxes, that's a good thing.
Right.
So.
Well, I won't coach you on that given what's going on, down the road. But so you're sitting in a company, you're working with entrepreneurs, they're participating, you're helping them solve problems. Like what about the way an entrepreneur thinks, do you think provides maybe some insight into value creation, or the alpha side of the Greeks there, versus, way that a lot of people that kind of get locked in their thinking and be a little bit more staid? Is there anything there we can kind of talk about in your journey with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, and this is going to sound incredibly egotistical, and quite frankly, that's why I'm saying it.
Well, you've earned it. So
how can we talk more about me? But one thing I noticed about entrepreneurs in terms of success and all that is when I disagreed with a management team, 99% of the time I was right. And in the discussions with the management teams, I would tell them, look, I've got limited involvement in this company. You live it day to day. So I don't really know the company as well as you do, and I never will. And the fact that I can see something wrong means it's bad wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's glaring that it's bad, you know? And I get that you can't see it because you're in the middle of it and all that. And I think the CEOs that would sit there, and say, F you, wound up not being as successful as the CEOs that said,
you got a point.
Tell me about that. What am I missing?
Yeah.
So it was the curious nature of CEOs that sat there, and I think really differentiated some that were able to pivot, some that were able to do some things that led to success, versus those that jumped on the horse and just rode.
So I think it's interesting because as entrepreneurs, we have there's a classic kind of like Steve Jobs influence, maybe meme about entrepreneurs that you put on your black turtleneck and you just do whatever you feel like you need to do in a given time. But I think making everybody gets advice, but classifying where that advice is coming from and what the caveats are, and then making a choice, like what you're going to do is a big part of the responsibility and
now I'm
business.
gonna argue the opposite side of this, because I also believe this wholeheartedly too, is as decision making gets dispersed, it becomes worse. Because
unpack that. What does that mean?
Yeah. So here's what I mean by that. At the end of the day, to be able to make a return, you've got to know something that the market doesn't know, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if the general consensus of what something worth is a bell curve, and the answer is probably right in the middle. The buyer, by definition, is over here
every time,
overvaluing it. But if they have unique knowledge to that end, then okay, they can get away with it and they can make money. That unique knowledge and that belief in the future or the difference of consensus, as you have to solve for more people, becomes less and less, and you move to consensus. And so the thought out there is that as funds get bigger, they do worse. And it's because, more money, they're doing different types of deals. There's definitely an element to that. But also what you lose when you get bigger funds is no longer one person really making those decisions and saying this is the path we should chart.
Yeah.
And so, you need a leader that's going to be curious, ask questions and all, but they've also got to chart the course.
Right.
And to the extent they're running around building consensus among 12 members of the management team, you're going to resort to the consensus, and the consensus always underperforms or is average performance, right?
Sure. And so, then that's part of, the dynamic going on in private equity, right? When you're making an investment, you got to see returns, 20-30% at a minimum in order to kind of break even, so to speak. And so that really drives decision-making towards taking outsized bets. Is that why?
Well, and you know what I think it is looking at the energy funds right now and not saying any names because that's specifically prohibited by clause 12 of my, no, I'm just kidding. But if you look at the energy funds, I think the energy funds that have performed better than others have concentrated decision-making. Huh. And, as funds have gotten bigger, they have more people on the management committee and the like, performance has gone down. And I think, size is going to be a contributing factor to that, to your point. But the other point is, as you solve for everyone, you become consensus. And it's really hard to make money just playing the consensus.
Yeah. So, let's compare and contrast the investment banking managing director of a private equity company world that you were living in on one side of your life with the founders and CEOs of oil companies on the other side. Like what did the two groups of people do that was crazy to the other? What were they the same? Like how did those two personalities interact?
We were weird on that front in that half of our partners were reservoir engineers as opposed to strict finance people.
Right. So reservoir engineers meaning people that actually calculate the value of something, right?
But just meaning people that had grown up at a major.
Yeah.
They'd all gone to Netherlands, Sewell, or somewhere else. They'd been in operational roles, and now they're doing private equity, as opposed to someone like me, finance guy, investment banker, move into the buy side to do private equity. I mean, those culture clashes, pure finance guys versus operators. I mean, I could see a big valley there in terms of you drill 3 dry holes and the finance guy goes, you don't know what you're doing. Where, my co-managing partner at Kane was Mike Hines, greatest guy on the world. Mike could say, nah, Chuck, we signed up and we knew that was the risk and it just happened. They did everything they should have, right? So I think we bridged that gap a little more.
Yeah.
But man, you hear horror stories of CEOs sitting there going, I was sitting in a board meeting and I presented the next year's drilling schedule and somebody asked the question, which one are going to be the dry holes again? So,
if only you could predict that, right?
Exactly.
Well, I think part of what drove the fundamental surface for entrepreneurship in oil and gas is that translation from, 1 in 4 make it to, 99% make it. And being able to predict the returns and really kind of create the opportunity. What are you doing now? Like after your exit again from Kane, what's bringing you life? Like what, are you still in contact with those entrepreneurs that that you built your career with?
To some degree, I am. I mean, they obviously have lives, and so we're not talking as frequently as we used to. But the thing I noticed that I didn't appreciate, I I think it was April 28th. I need to look up the date and
Yeah.
make sure I have a big anniversary party of the 1 year.
Let's do
it's
it.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
But, you know, kind of a couple of days afterwards where I didn't have to get on phone calls, I didn't have to make decisions anymore. I don't think I realized just how much stress I was under. And I give the analogy, my mom got a hip replacement.
Sure.
And I went and saw her the next day after surgery, and I said, "Mom, how you doing?" And she goes, "Well, obviously I hurt because my body was splayed open and a bone was cut out of me. But the chronic arthritis that I had in my hip, that constant pain," she was like, "I had no idea I hurt that bad until it was gone.
Yeah.
And now I feel great." And so, you know, the last year has been, wow. Not a lot of stress in my life anymore. I mean, I'm dealing with 3 teenagers and all that.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, they're all doing really well right now. But just not having that stress has been amazing. And I think what it's allowed me to do is, I'm off doing the podcast and having a blast doing that. The other thing, and this is going to sound weird, but I feel like I'm the Brene Brown right now of the oil and gas business. I mean, I kind of feel, I went through a divorce 5 years ago, threw myself into tons of therapy. I've read every Brene Brown book and all. And so I feel this weird obligation that if somebody, sends a text at 11 o'clock at night saying, "Hey, I just got fired, my life's over," and all that, I need to do something about it. Because So I've spent a lot of time doing that. And it's actually been really, really rewarding. So, my running joke is, I'll move in with my parents before I get another job. So,
well, I think those 11 p.m., 2 a.m. phone calls are part of life. And I think, is it just like exposing yourself to the risk of starting a company and being okay with balancing the fact that some of those starts are good and some of them, turn out to where you have an exit of some kind. And some of those starts, things happen, the world collapses in on you and it is not really speaking to you as a person. Like what drives an 11 p.m. phone call? Is it,
you know what I think happens is, because I do think Brene Brown's right about this.
Yeah.
Ultimately, bad behavior from us, whether it's yelling at somebody, drinking too much, drugs, whatever it is we don't have a sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, when we don't feel loved, that's it. And at least what I unpacked from myself was the fact that, my ex-wife's approval meant everything. And when it was denied, my world just crumbled down. And so when I sit there and get that 11 o'clock call, the 3 a.m. call doesn't really happen because usually I turn my phone off. But, to the extent I got one, when you start unraveling it, you find out that person's sense of self-worth is in their job.
Yeah.
And when it's taken from them, when they're fired, they've lost all their identity. And I think, key to talking to someone in that thing is like, dude or dudette, that's not who you are.
Right.
And it shouldn't define you. I mean, some dude tried to eat a bat in China, which ultimately led to oil being minus 37. And so you get fired and you're telling me that you should feel worse about yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that is a big part, swinging for the fences, becoming an entrepreneur, starting a company. You want it to go well, but if it doesn't mean that you're a failure either.
One of the greatest moments I had in my career that I didn't appreciate at the time, but now I have just tons of admiration for. Maybe I was 25 years old. I'm in Midland. I'm at the Petroleum Club. I'm eating dinner with these old guys or eating lunch with these old guys. And they're sitting around going, that's about the time I lost company number 3. I really like that one. The ex-wife got company 4. Number 5 went bust with this. Number 6, I had a company car that was Rolls Royce. And it was just like water off a duck's back. Just no big deal. And the ability to kind of navigate, all right, now I'm poor. I like it better when I'm rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important because at the end of the day, I mean, your work doesn't define you. It really is. What kind of human are you? What kind of friends do you have? How's your family doing?
Yeah.
That means so much more. And, companies are going to fail. I mean, Ray Kroc started McDonald's at 63.
Right.
I mean, we all have time left.
Yeah. So what does that speak to what you're doing next? I mean, obviously you're the Brene Brown of oil and gas, but beyond that, like what's next for you?
So I know this. I will never have a job where I can't wear a hoodie.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I will never manage people again. No offense, but I'm not managing people ever again. And then, number three is I know I don't want to run a money management company.
Yeah. I
don't mind being an investor.
Right.
I don't mind creating a tool that it makes investing better for somebody. But at the end of the day, just raising money, instead of sitting there going, what is a good investment or what can I raise money to do? I just don't ever want to feel that. I don't want to go look at the income statement of my money management company. And so that's a whole lot of thou shalt nots,
right?
In my life, which I don't know that it's led me to a thou shall.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Short answer to your question, don't know, dude.
Well, I think that you got to give yourself time and space to kind of figure that out. Are you open to advising entrepreneurs from the internet that say, hey, I saw you on the podcast. I want to ask you this particular question. Is that something you do?
I mean, despite what Colin says about me, Colin, it's not true. I answer every DM. I answer every LinkedIn message I get.
Yeah.
And if I don't, it means I missed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was on the phone yesterday talking to somebody about geothermal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any clue, but you might want to ask these questions and stuff. Cause this is going to, I can hear Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen playing in the background.
Back in 82.
Yeah, back in 82. But no, I mean, when you get to be the old guy, and fortunately I'm not as old as Alan Gilmer, but when you get to be the old guy, you want to see the young guys succeed. It's kind of cool, you want to, and I say guys and gals.
Sure,
but
of course.
Yeah. No, you want to see them succeed. So yeah, I'm always happy to answer questions. I always tell people it's worth what you paid for it.
Yeah.
Just remember that.
Well, aside from that, you're also on a podcast yourself. Chuck Yates Needs a Job. So is that are you hoping to source your next career from the podcast itself?
God, I hope not. I mean, given some of the episodes we've done, I mean, we did Pizzagate where we sat there. Lindsay was on a date, and I never met Lindsay, and I just kept sending pizzas to her house. I mean, I guess maybe I can become a Domino's delivery guy. But I hope nobody gives me a job based on the podcast. That probably wouldn't work out well.
Well, that sounds good. Chuck, really appreciate your time. I think your lesson of your business card isn't your identity, and that you really need to think about the kind of person you are in the context of the kinds of decisions you're making. And don't forget about the beta, the things that went well because they were going well, regardless of what you did. I think are all lessons that we can take away, and certainly things that I identify with. Thanks for your time. Risk Profile, hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share our podcast and connect with us on LinkedIn, or send me an email at mark@riskprofile.us. And of course, go check out Chuck Yates Still Needs a Job podcast, or just Needs a Job podcast.
Or go see Nimble Fatty on Twitter.
Nimble Fatty on Twitter. And
self-emulation happens every day.
And Tuesdays at 9:00 on Clubhouse?
It's Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Central. Jeff Davies, that's Energy Credit One on Twitter. We do a Clubhouse, and we usually bring in a guest. Last night we had on DRW. And
things got weird.
Things got weird. Yeah, I'm still getting hate texts today. So,
well, thanks so much, and go out there and be someone.